good afternoon or good evening to all who have joined. We appreciate you joining this web conference and hope it's a very valuable use of your time today. I'm Dan Shaver, Vice President of Sales for IDV Solutions. I met many of you at Intersec in Dubai and enjoyed the time to get to know you and to learn about kind of your business and to talk about how Visual Command Center could help your business. So I'm going to be going through an overview on the technology. We're going to go through a slide deck, and then after that we're going to dive into a live demo of the Visual Command Center. I look forward to following up with each of you individually, and we'll have a slide at the end that has contact information and suggested next steps. So the webinar will go probably about 45 minutes to an hour, and I look forward to showing the technology to everyone on the call. So first, let's look at the problem that we're solving with a Visual Command Center. So I've been in many command centers for our customers here across the U.S. and some international customers, as well as some government customers. And the common problem is that there's really just a significant amount of different data sources that that organizations are struggling to integrate into their command center and physical security operations. So we think of things like video management systems, traveler data, fleet, intrusion, weather, access control, floor plans, incident management systems, real-time data feeds that are giving us real-time and predictive weather. All of these different data sources are coming into the command center typically on a one-to-one basis. So one data source equals one monitor. Oftentimes folks are accessing their video management system through perhaps a web terminal, access control through another dedicated web terminal. Traveler data is coming through a website. Floor plans are in a file cabinet somewhere or in a folder. And it's very difficult to visually reconcile all of those data sources in a familiar and intuitive context. So certainly no shortage of data, but the problem rather is bringing that data into a meaningful context. So Visual Command Center does just that. It's a web-based visualization platform that enables the consolidation, the visual consolidation of all of those disparate back-end data sources in a common and familiar context over the web. So when we have high-level or global data sets like global weather information, global terrorist information, that what we would call situational awareness data, that can all be viewed in one context. So very practically, for example, if we see a hurricane or a typhoon coming in, the first question that we ask ourselves is, well, what does that mean to our organization? How can that affect our people? How can that affect our mobile assets? How can that affect our travelers? How can that affect our product in transit? And with traditional security arrangements or traditional command center arrangements, it's very difficult to answer that question effectively and quickly. With the command center, it can be done within a matter of a couple seconds by clicking simply on the weather source and then viewing all of the implications to your operations and the risk that you're exposed to in near real time. So that's kind of that global view. But then at the ground level, integrating with physical security systems like access control and video, it's critical to have not just a global view, not just the situational awareness view, but also the ability to drill down and get a live connection to those back-end systems like access control and VMS, intrusion. So we're going to see today in the Visual Command Center how we can get the global to ground level view into our physical security operations. Now it's important to note that the Visual Command Center is not introducing a new data source. The Command Center is simply connecting back to the existing data sources, to your existing physical security systems via a direct connection to the back-end database, a connection via an API, or a web services connection. The Visual Command Center also is rendering all of that content, again, in the familiar context of location and time. So let's talk a minute about some of the premium content that's included with the Visual Command Center. IDV Solutions has negotiated large volume contracts with some of the best content providers in the world. And there are about 80 different data feeds, live feeds that are brought into the Command Center that are part of the off-the-shelf Command Center product. And some of those just high-level categories are global real-time and predictive weather information. So this is just a sampling, but some of the data sources include real-time and predictive precipitation, including snow and ice, wind, temperature, hurricane and typhoon predictive paths, global terrorist activity, global border issues, global seismic activity, global disease risk. All of these data sources, including about 70 others, are part of the off-the-shelf Command Center solution and again, part of the Visual Command Center product. So let's talk a minute about a key differentiator of the Visual Command Center. It really goes beyond connecting to physical security data sources. And when I say that, I'm speaking specifically about connecting to access control, VMS, and intrusion. Obviously, all critical things to bring into the visualization. But let's not forget the bigger picture, the situational awareness picture. And that involves bringing in external data sets, bringing in on the fly the ability for users to find a data feed, to maybe draw on the map, to collaborate, to add a note on the map. And that ability is critical when you're talking about response and when you're talking about responding to disasters that really happen, obviously, unpredictably and at a moment's notice. So giving end users, security people, the ability to use a non-technical tool to do things like upload a floor plan to the map and then geolocate, pin IP devices to the map, reference those devices geospatially is critical. The ability for folks in the field to upload a photo from any mobile device that's GPS and web enabled to get that real-time situational view of what's going on in the field is critical. To have the ability to see all of your data as a real-time data feed that's coming into a common context is critical. And then finally, the ability to take the Command Center anywhere. And we're going to dive into that in a bit more detail in a minute. But having the folks in the field with iPads, with slates, with mobile devices to be able to get that critical data, the mission critical data, perhaps even control or influence things like cameras, to be able to lock doors, the ability to do that sort of thing from the field, of course, given the appropriate permissions and credentials, is something that really changes the way that we do and manage response to physical security incidents. So at a high level, what is the Command Center doing? It really is that visual hub for connecting disparate back-end data sources. So again, back-end systems, access control, VMS, bringing in the premium data feeds. And I should mention that the Command Center is a wide open platform, SDKs on the front end and the back end, as well as open in the sense that an end user or a power user can find a data feed, for example, a local crime feed, or a feed provided by the government that gives us crime statistics data, and bring that data feed in on the fly. Maybe it's connecting to a social media site that's giving us some kind of guerrilla intelligence on things that are happening in the area that we could be concerned about. So bringing in data feeds on the fly is critical and really a missing component in our traditional security visualization tools. Bringing the data into the proper context. So most data, if there's a what, there's a where and there's a when. The Visual Command Center integrates natively, out of the box, has integrated mapping and time temporal analysis capabilities so that we're able to see our data from two perspectives, two very important perspectives, those of time and location. And then empowering the field worker, empowering the feet on the street. We're going to dive into this story in a lot more detail. But again, a missing component in traditional security visualization tools is the ability for folks in the field, for folks in the command center, to be able to do things like ad hoc upload a photo while they're in the field, or bring in a floor plan on the fly without doing any development, bring in a data feed on the fly, upload an Excel spreadsheet, and see that data appear on the map. So again, bringing those four components together into a common visualization really is the power of the command center. So let's talk about taking the command center with you. So central to the Visual Command Center offering is the desktop browser-based visualization tool. Full function, spatial alerting, all kinds of great features, and we'll talk about those in more detail when we go through the demo. But a very powerful web-based tool that you can access anywhere you have a PC. Just as powerful is the ability to take the command center into the field. For executives, for folks, interested parties, security partners, command centers that are situated globally, for folks who have iPads or slates to be able to access that same data, the same view that they're seeing in the command center from the field is critical. And not only to be able to access that data, but to be able to do things, to take action on that data. So we've had partners and customers who go as far as integrating with their access control, with their VMS, to be able to do things like send video, to be able to do things like actually affect the status of a door, whether it's locked or unlocked, to be able to see the current status. If we have a DFO, really to be able to have the full power of the command center on an iPad or on a slate is extremely powerful. And then to take it a bit further, a mobile device. So Visual Command Center comes with an IDV product that's called Fetch. And Fetch allows folks like guards, people on the street, for public-private partnerships, local law enforcement, allows an organization to give tailored, restricted access to security information. Things like alarm conditions for a building, floor plans, alarm history, all at the whim of a command to be able to, from your mobile device, type in a simple command and retrieve, for example, a building report that gives us critical information on a building from a mobile device. So before we walk into a situation, we know who our contact information, who our contact is. We know recent alarm activity. We're able to see a floor plan from any mobile device that can render HTML. So any mobile device running a browser that has internet connectivity. So the Visual Command Center is in its own right a very powerful, off-the-shelf physical security visualization platform, and is typically up and running within a matter of a couple hours, just from an installation perspective, and then over the course of a week, we typically have the command center running fully functionally in an organization. But then there's deeper levels of integration that are possible and always desired with the command center. So it's an open platform built on Microsoft technologies. It's not a black box. It's not a bunch of proprietary software that requires extensive and specialized training to deploy and implement. It really is an open platform, as I mentioned, with full front-end and back-end SDKs. There's extensive documentation on the Visual Command Center and Visual Fusion platforms. Documentation can be seen at docs.idvsolutions.com. Integrator training program. So monthly we host training that gives full and extensive training on the platform to really empower integrators, partners, and customers with a skill set they need to build and expand on the Visual Command Center platform. A proven track record in the industry. Many of the Global 1000 have implemented the Visual Command Center and are using it on a day-to-day basis to monitor their physical security operations. Some of the largest organizations in the world are using the Visual Command Center, including a very close partnership that we have with Microsoft's global security team, who has 3 global command centers and security personnel situated across the globe who rely on visual fusion and the Visual Command Center to manage their operations more efficiently and more effectively, all while leveraging the existing Microsoft stack that most organizations already have. And to that point, I am going to have a slide at the end that points out who the local Microsoft Global Security Contact is, a practitioner. This is someone who has a pedigree in physical security and law enforcement, and who is showing kind of best practices how on the Microsoft stack and leveraging that existing Microsoft investment, you can really more effectively manage your physical security operations. And I'm going to introduce you to Hussein at the end of the call. So let's go over now to a demo of the Visual Command Center. So I'm going to share my browser, which I'm doing now. And here you can see the basic look and feel of the Command Center. I am looking at the Visual Command Center through my browser, so it's a secure site. We integrate natively with SharePoint security or with Active Directory security. So role-based views, security trimming, all part of the Command Center. It's as secure as your current network is. A basic layout or an overview onto the Visual Command Center. The map view, this is Microsoft's Bing Maps product. We've got the road, aerial, and hybrid views. We can zoom into the aerial imagery. We can zoom out and see a global context. And at this level, we're showing some of the global data feeds that are part of the Command Center. So we've got seismic activity, Reuters news, terrorism information. We've got wildfires, global weather. We can see cloud coverage right now. And we can see all of that content in the context of our operations. So where are our people? Where are our assets? Again, this data that we see, these checkboxes to the right, all of these checkboxes represent different data sources. It's representing your HR data. It's representing data coming from access control, from VMS, floor plans, external data feeds. All of that data is coming from different back-end sources, but visually consolidated in the Command Center. And what's important to note here is that we maintain context through all of the different ways of viewing the data. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look specifically at the earthquake data that we're seeing come in. So when I click on that checkbox, I can see that the earthquakes show up here on the map. And when I mouse over an earthquake, it shows me, it pings. Certainly, a tooltip comes up and gives me more information. On click, I can go get full details on that seismic event. But also notice here that when we expand this data set, I get some other information. I mouse over a point on and the details over here, it highlights on the timeline. It highlights on the map. So I'm able to maintain context as I interact with the data. So just as I can pan and zoom with the map here above, below I've got an interactive timeline. Any data that has a temporal element to it, so whether I'm talking about investigations data, incident data, door alarms, whatever the information may be, if it has a timestamp on it, it's going to show up, of course, on the map if it has a location element. But then if it's temporally aware, it's also going to show up on this timeline. And just as we can pan and zoom on the map, we can pan and zoom on the timeline, all the way down to seconds, a frequency of seconds, to see when things are happening, to do further analysis. We can see here that we had a spike in terrorism activity at this time. And as we mouse over these events, we can see that it was scattered. And there's probably no further action required because it's not necessarily a trend geographically, it's just a trend temporally. But again, it gives us another perspective on the data and another helpful element to help us quickly respond to an incident or to quickly recognize a trend or a pattern in our data. So this is kind of the global view. We can get that all-up situation view. We can see travelers. We can see as they're planning to enter maybe dangerous areas, we can send them notifications. But let's now zoom into or bring in another data feed that gives us some more detailed weather data. And in this specific example, we're going to pull in a predictive hurricane plume. So of course this is showing a kind of a made-up hurricane, but this is the same thing I would see during the hurricane season, which is the predicted impact plume of a hurricane. So this is a global data set, hurricanes and typhoons. I click on that impact plume. Now let's just take a step back for a minute. Let's think about how we're handling situations like this currently in a command center. It's typically a painful process. Perhaps the weather is up on one monitor, and we're seeing maybe a local news that's showing us where the hurricane's going. But then we have to reconcile that, and we quickly ask the question, so what? What does this mean for our organization? What does it mean for our travelers? What does it mean to our assets? And getting to the answer of what does it mean is very painful and requires a lot of coordination and a lot of time. But with the Visual Command Center, it's very easy to get the answer. So we click on the impact plume. We can quickly turn that into a query. So what I'm doing here from a technical level is I'm doing a spatial query on the data. I'm using that data feed that's coming in from a weather provider, that real-time feed, and I'm turning it into a spatial query. And I can quickly see that I've got 3 facilities in this area. I can send these folks a message. I can automatically see which employees I have in this hurricane path. I can see the travelers that are in this area, and I can send these folks a message. Again, our front-end visualization has an open API. So what we often see our customers do is send that message, coordinate with their mass notification system to have that native system that you're already using send the message out via the current methods and the current rules that you have established in that system. But out of the box with the command center, you can do text and email alerting without any further technology required. But as I said, again, oftentimes folks are integrating our front end via our API, connecting to a back-end mass notification system that's already in place to manage those rules, the escalation policies, the distribution policies that you're used to. So now let's, for a minute, drill down and look at more of a localized view. So you'll notice as I go up here and click on the right, there are a couple options. One is bird's eye imagery, but another is out-of-the-box tools that are part of the command center. And rather than kind of describe each of them to you, I'm going to go through and show them to you as I demonstrate the product. So the first is called Favorites, and this is a very helpful tool. What this is it allows folks to create a view, to turn on certain feeds, to make notes, to zoom into a particular area geographically, and to then establish that as a favorite. So think about someone who's responsible for a certain geography, who every day is looking kind of at the same view of things. Instead of kind of starting from scratch, from having to bring in certain data feeds, to add notes, to zoom into an area geographically every day, to do that, kind of go through that whole process, you can simply create a favorite, and then once you have a favorite created, you can go further, and then you can kind of dive into that very quickly without having to restructure or reset every time. So let's drill in now to see some local conditions. So here we're looking at a few things. We're looking at data. We're looking at specifically Los Angeles, California. We're bringing in employee locations. We're bringing in employee commutes. We're bringing in executive locations. We're bringing in real-time traffic cameras that are made available publicly. And really every area has their own data providers. And again, that's the value of the Visual Command Center platform, is that we can bring in those standard data sets, even localized data sets, without having to do any significant development. We can also see here as we expand the timeline, we can see some local crime information coming in from a data provider that's giving us, and again, this data is all real. They're giving us crime data. We can mouse over an area here, and we can see that there is a shooting. And so let's follow this use case a little bit. So we can go up to this tools. We'll choose a spatial query tool, and we'll look at within 2.7 miles, which employees do we have within that area. And we can see that we have a total of 19 employees. We can see in this chart, so part of the command center on the platform is out-of-the-box integrated charts and graphs. Very helpful when you're doing things like analysis, alarm analysis, crime analysis, local condition analysis. Those types of analysis all can be done through the Visual Command Center's out-of-the-box charts and graphs. And you'll notice as I mouse over a feature in the integrated chart, I'm going to see that corresponding feature ping on the map to the left. So I can see that I do in fact have some commuters that are within 2.5 miles. We can switch our units here. We can look at kilometers alternatively. But I might want to send these folks a notification, just as we showed before. But I can go further and say, well, I can see who could be impacted, which commuters could be impacted based on their proximity to this event, this gang shooting. But what about looking at some real-time information? And so we are looking at data in California here, so it's dark there presently. But we can mouse over this camera. It's an IP camera, and we can see that it looks like traffic is flowing okay. It looks like everything is kind of business as usual. So I'm not too concerned about sending a notification out to the employees in that area, because it doesn't appear that anything was really impacted by that shooting that happened in California. So very helpful that we can get the global view, but we can also go down when integrating with local information, local data feeds, and get that situational awareness at the local or the ground level. Now let's go to another favorite, and let's look at a campus. So we mentioned the importance of looking at a global view for getting that situation awareness perspective. But now let's look at a campus view. So I mentioned how important, again, it is to have the context of being able to zoom in beyond the rooftop. And you'll see what we're doing here is we're actually integrating with the floor plan. So we're overlaying a floor plan image on top of the map. And this is very valuable when we want to visualize and start to kind of spatially reference physical security devices like cameras, badge scanners, entry points, turnstiles, those sorts of things. So we can see here that we've got a view of the parking lot here. We can see what's going on. This is a motion JPEG. On click, I can get more details on that camera. You can see what's going on here, where it is geospatially. And what's really valuable, let's drill into the floor level details, is that we can toggle between floors. So here I'm looking at the first floor, but I can toggle to the second, to the third, to the fourth, and I'm only going to see the devices that correspond to the floor that I've selected. If I want to see my access control points, I can sort those by current status, whether I have a door forced open, acknowledged, the current status, whether it's normal, and I can see just those alarms that I should be looking at. So I don't want to see every entry point. I just want to see those that are in an alarm condition. I can search through my feeds and find a specific device name, a specific camera name, for example, or reference it by Northwest parking lot, or however I've referenced that camera. I can search through all of my cameras, all of my assets, and this holds true for anything that we're viewing in the command center. I can search through that content. But what's also really valuable is when it comes to adding a new device. So very painful process, and many of you have been through this, is adding a new device, whether that's a camera or a badge scanner, to a visualization. So traditionally, the way that that's done is that someone goes out, they find the GPS coordinates, they enter those coordinates in a database, and then they've essentially just spatially referenced the device. But what's very painful is maybe that the GPS device was a little bit less than perfect. Well, what we have is the perfect solution for accurately representing edge devices. So, for example, this camera, we know that it's not located in the middle of this conference room. It's actually located on the corner of the building. So how do we reconcile that? Well, what we do is just click on the camera, and if we have the correct permissions, we'll just click Edit, and we'll move that camera to the edge of the building. So now the camera shows up in its proper context. Accordingly, if I want to add a new camera, all I do is just expand, again, this data feed is pulling directly from the camera devices. It's pulling directly from the IP address. I can click Add a New Item, drop a camera in here, call it Test 1, and of course just reference things like the feed URL, the IP address of that camera. Our refresh intervals indicate which floor number we're saving that camera, and then I've just essentially spatially referenced a camera to the map. So let's talk for a minute about how we get the floor plans on the map. Because really there are no, apart from the Visual Command Center, there are no good solutions for visually representing, or rather spatially representing a floor plan over a geo-referenced map or over a geographic map. So the Command Center makes that very simple. So the Command Center allows you to upload a floor plan to the SharePoint image library in a PNG or a JPEG format. And then once you upload the document, this dialog box or this action box pops up, shows you the image, and then shows that image represented spatially. So here we've got a fully navigable Bing map. We can resize the image. We can rotate the image. We can position the image. And then once we've done that, we can actually go down further and indicate the name of the image, which floor number it is. We have all of the capability to geo-reference, to spatially reference that floor plan, really without doing any kind of advanced mapping techniques, without going through a painful process that is required otherwise outside the Command Center to geo-reference that floor plan. So once I've gone through that very simple process that takes about 30 seconds, I then have a fully spatially referenced image on the map. Here I'm also seeing data sets like mobile responders. So the Visual Command Center fully supports real-time streaming GPS information. What do I mean by that? Where are our people? Vehicles in the field that are broadcasting GPS signals. Guards who are moving about whose mobile devices are broadcasting a GPS signal. The Command Center, you can set individual refresh rates through simple configuration on every data source that we bring in, whether it's a weather data source or a real-time GPS location being broadcast from a mobile asset. We can also see field contributions. So I mentioned this, people in the field, any mobile device that's GPS and web-enabled, they simply take a picture, make a note in the subject line and in the body of the email if they desire to give more context, and send that picture to an email address, and it will automatically show up on the Command Center where it was taken, and then in the timeline when it was taken, for a consolidated view of everything that's happening from the folks on the street. So now let's go to kind of a planning view. So here we're gonna zoom out. We're gonna look at Dubai for a minute. We're gonna look at Jumeirah Beach in Dubai. And this really shows the power of using the Visual Command Center for coordination and collaboration. So here we can see that we've got some folks in the field who have taken some pictures at the beach, and this really gives us a good idea of what's going on at the present time at that location. And we've had someone here enter an incident, so they've logged an incident, and they've done that simply by coming up here to the incident, and this is pulling directly from their native incident management system. We can also write back to that system and log incidents. It's as simple as clicking on Add a New Incident, dropping the point spatially, and we'll call this arson. And we can add the time of the incident. And this form that we're editing here is We can add a business user, a power user can add as many fields to this form as you'd like to capture things like who's logging the information. It keeps full revision history. It lets us know who created the incident, when it was created, how it was followed up. As people log in and edit that incident and update it, it's going to save changes. And we can see as soon as we saved that, we can now see that incident on the map. But we can go further than that. We can start to coordinate our response. So here we can see that we've added a note that we have a staging area. This is where we're going to assemble the team to respond. Here we have a foot team. It's as simple as adding a label to the map. So here we can have response team 2. And we can see that I've just added another comment to the map. I can draw out a route. So here we can see our responders. I can see where they are based on their GPS location, or I can just drop those responders on the map as I added an incident or as I added cameras before. I can add a drive time route. So here this shows me the route I'm going to take from where we're assembling the team to where the incident happened. We can also identify areas. So here we can see that we have a VIP residence, and that's why this incident is of particular interest to us. So a very powerful tool for coordinating and collaborating around information in real time. And remember, any of the data that we're viewing here, we can also view on the iPad. So let's go back just briefly to the hurricane and look at coordinating a response to that hurricane that we saw earlier. So I'm going to dive right into the hurricane that we saw in the U.S. Gulf. And so now we can see that as we bring in other data sources, we can see traffic cameras, we can see that we have a traveler here in New Orleans. So again, this data is coming directly from our traveler provider, our travel data provider, whether that's Amex, iJet. Really, again, the data source doesn't matter. We support all the standard data methods. So let's zoom in now to New Orleans. And as we zoom in, we're going to see more and more information start to pop up. We can see things like, of course, traffic cameras, but then we can start to layer in other complementary data sets like hospitals, public transportation, airports. And this data is all coming from, and it's all included with the command center, it's all coming from the Microsoft Point of Interest library. So we can see our traveler down here, and let's say we want to route that traveler, Stefan, to the nearest hospital. So let's do that. We can do that right here from the command center. So to route him to the nearest hospital, we just right-click on Stefan. We add him to the driving directions, and then we right-click on this hospital up here and add that to driving directions. And now we can see exactly how to route Stefan to that area. And then we can send these, we can copy these directions, send them via email, or we can launch the directions in Bing Maps and send them to a GPS. Also, a very important tool that we have is the ability to do an analysis, what's called a drive time analysis. And this is really important when we're talking about finding the nearest responder to an incident, or when we want to do something like perform an action, integrating with our APIs or our SDKs. If you're tracking a shooter, a mobile shooter, and you want to know how far they can get in 5, 10, or 15 minutes, and then, for example, if we're integrated deeply, and this does require pretty extensive integration with a VMS or access control, but if we've gone ahead and done that deep integration, we can even do things like, all right, let's lock down all of our facilities within a 6-minute drive because the shooter's mobile, or within a 5-minute drive, or here we can see 10 minutes. And what's important to note here is this is not a simple spatial query. This is really showing us on a temporal, from a temporal perspective, what resources we have within a certain drive time, considering topology and topography, how far someone can get within a certain time span, and it's a really valuable analysis that we can perform out of the box with the Visual Command Center. We can push notifications to everyone within that plume. Really a lot of power to do a lot of deep analysis with the tool. So let's just look at one other thing, and then we're going to go back to the slide deck and talk about next steps. As I mentioned, it's important that the command center is an open platform that allows users to bring in content on the fly. And what do I mean by content? So data feeds. Feeds are it's kind of a popular buzzword right now, not just in security, but in business generally. And data feeds like RSS feeds, KML, KMZ, WMS, all these popular ways of sharing information in real time with people. So I've navigated to the United States Geological Survey, and they publish all kinds of data feeds. Many state and local governments across the world publish similar data sets. They give us local crime information, local traffic conditions. So it's very straightforward to bring in these data feeds, and let me show you how one would do that. Here we can see that we have earthquakes over the past 30 days. If I want to bring those into the command center, if I want to bring this feed in, I just copy the shortcut, go back to the command center, we'll paste that data feed in the command center. It allows us to choose an icon to represent that data feed. And now as I zoom out, you're going to see that we have global seismic activity, fully interactive. You can see the details coming from that feed. We can see that feed also shows up on the timeline. If I scroll up here to the top, we can see it's now been added to my view here that I've saved. And if I create a favorite now, it's going to remember that, and every time I log in, it's going to have that data feed. So a very powerful way to bring in data on the fly. And then just kind of rounding out the view of favorites and the tools that we have here. There's full screen view. You can take a snapshot of the map. You can do things like change your units, your distance units here. In favorites, we can share our favorites with others. Now, of course, they have to have permission to the data that we're looking at to view my favorite. And then further, the ability to cycle through or play through those favorites. And this is really helpful for the command center. So if we go full screen, and then we do the slideshow that's going to play through the favorites, what this is doing is it's actually cycling through my favorites. And this isn't a PowerPoint. These aren't screen caps. This is a live view into my security operations. So this is showing me at current, here's the situation, here's what's going on. And this can be playing on the command center. Alerts will ping on the map. I should also mention at this point that spatial alerting is part of the visual command center. So the ability to set spatial buffers around your facilities and then receive notifications if something happens within X kilometers of a facility or an asset. A very powerful tool, an essential tool for managing physical security operations. So let's go back and talk about next steps now. So next step, really a very practical next step is to contact me. So my contact information is here. My email address, dan.shaver@idvsolutions.com. And a really important note, if you log into our website, if you look up Visual Command Center, you're going to see that there are a lot of clients in the U.S., powerful international clients, U.S. government using the Visual Command Center and Visual Fusion platforms extensively. We're very interested from a partner and an integrator perspective in increasing our footprint. And the timing's right. The Command Center is a great technology that's very valuable, and organizations it solves a pain point that's very obvious in the industry. But beyond that, it's a proven technology in the U.S. with case studies and proven customers who are willing to talk about how effective and valuable the Command Center has been for their organization. We're currently offering international reseller and new customer incentives. We're looking to really spread the word of the Command Center and establish footprint internationally. So please do call, reach out to me, and we'll arrange meetings, webinars to demo to your team for your organization, to a broader audience at your organization. But the command center is ready to ship, so we're ready to send it out and deploy it for customers too. I also should mention here that, and I did mention already, on the phone now, though I'm not able to bring him into the call, is Hussein. And Hussein represents Microsoft Global Security for the MEA region. Hussein, his contact information is here. He can show how Microsoft is using the Visual Command Center and how they're generally their best practices for managing physical security. So feel free to reach out to Hussein too to tell you more about how Microsoft is using Visual Command Center to streamline their operations. Hussein would even be happy to give you a tour of one of their global operations centers. So with that, I'm going to go back up to my contact information. Please make sure that you shoot me an email or give me a call. And I look forward to talking to you individually and seeing how the Command Center can help your business in the future. Thanks for your time, and have a great week.